Luca Brasi is one of the most interesting characters in Mario Puzo's The Godfather. In Puzo's original novel, Luca acts as Don Vito Corleone's most efficient and highly feared enforcer, whose ability as a killing machine is unmatched in the underworld and whose name strikes fear in the hearts of the bravest of men. There are chilling stories concerning Luca Brasi, many of which I've shared on the channel, so check them out and subscribe if you like what you see. This is a man who has murdered his own father, his own child, his own girlfriend, and is the only man who makes the great Don Corleone uncomfortable. He chopped up a gangster into pieces while the man was still alive, which frightened the next man in line so much that he swallowed and choked on his own gag rather than be Luca's next victim. Luca Brasi has been shot at point-blank range and lived to tell the tale. His inability to be defeated is so intense that even he can't kill himself, as proven when he took a bottle of pills to end his own life, which only ended up having an effect on his speech and cognitive ability. Much of the backstory of Luca Brasi is not in Francis Ford Coppola's movie The Godfather, where Luca is played by Lenny Montana, which is one of the reasons why it's so fun to make videos like these, filling in the blanks and adding context to the movie, so that you guys get a better picture of these characters. In Coppola's film, we are told that Brasi is a very scary man, a man with a reputation, but all we really see of him is him fumbling a wedding congratulations and then being unceremoniously bumped off. In fact, for such a feared and brutal character, his method of death is pretty lame and anticlimactic, and I've made a separate video on Luca Brasi's death scene which you can check out, giving it greater context. What I wanted to talk about today was an event Luca Brasi was involved in, which is perhaps Luca Brasi's most Luca-esque moment, an event which the kids today would call badass. It's a very cool moment, one showcasing Luca at his best, and it comes from The Family Corleone, a book published in 2021 by Ed Falco, which is a prequel to Mario Puzo's The Godfather. The book is based on an unpublished screenplay written by Mario Puzo himself, so it does have an air of legitimacy about it. Luca Brasi is one of the main characters in the novel. In the book, he is yet to be involved with the Corleone crime family, instead running his own gang of a handful of criminals. And even then, he is feared enough by rival mobsters that all kept wary of him. As detailed in a previous video of mine called The Horrifying Origin Story of Luca Brasi, Luca tries to kill himself after murdering his own child but fails, instead only succeeding in giving himself stroke-like symptoms. For more details, check out that video of Luca Brasi on my channel, but eventually he's recruited after this horrific chain of events by Don Vito Corleone to be used as a weapon against the enemies of the Corleone Empire. Luca is a heavy presence in the first half of the book. When he tries to kill himself and ends up going all Frankenstein, he is used a lot more sparingly, a la Francis Ford Coppola's The Godfather. But when he does appear, the passages in the book tend to be extremely intense, and they usually have Luca pulling off some insane or disturbing feats, such as the previously mentioned chopping up of another mobster while he screamed and withered in pain. It's a great use of the character because he doesn't outstay his welcome, but at the same time, you're able to build a framework in your head as to why this man is so feared by the time we get to Francis Ford Coppola's The Godfather. So for context, this scene takes place after Luca has already been recruited by Don Corleone and the underworld is aware he is working for the Corleone crime family. Don Corleone attends a meeting with the heads of the most powerful New York families after being summoned by the gangster Giuseppe Mariposa. Vito brings Luca along to showcase the strength of the Corleones, and much to the disgust of Mariposa. Giuseppe Mariposa proposes that the rest of the families, and these include the Tattaglias and the Brazinis, as seen in Francis Ford Coppola's movie, pay tribute to him since he is right at the top of the food chain. All the gangsters on the table swear allegiance to him, Vito included, but Mariposa secretly makes plans to kill the higher-ups of the Corleone family and swallow them into his empire. He's had his eye on Vito's businesses for a while now, and Vito knows this, and knows that this agreement in front of everyone is just a show, and this man Mariposa wants him dead. Sometime after the meeting, Mariposa makes plans to have Peter Clemenza and Genco Abandano murdered at a restaurant they are eating in order to weaken Vito Corleone so that he goes crawling to Mariposa begging for mercy. Genco was the consigliere of Vito Corleone before Tom Hagen, and Clemenza I'm sure Godfather fans are already familiar with. News of this assassination reaches the Corleones through a rat in Mariposa's crew, so they are ready for the two assassins, Anthony Boccatelli and Anthony Ferenza, when the men make their move. The book goes on to tell us, At Angelo's, the waiter had just delivered a covered tray to the table where Clemenza and Genco were talking casually to each other, a squat, straw-wrapped bottle of Chianti between them on a red tablecloth. Genco's elbows rested on either side of his plate, his hands pressed together palm to palm in front of his face, his 2 index fingers squeezing the tip of his nose. He nodded now and then as he listened to Clemenza, who was doing most of the talking. They both looked to be absorbed in their conversation, and neither of them seemed interested in the tray that had just been delivered. The restaurant was tiny, with only 6 tables, all of them close together. Clemenza's back was to the kitchen, near a set of leather-encased swinging doors with porthole windows through which Genco could see Angelo at his stove beside a stainless steel counter. The 4 other diners in the room were at tables across from each other, against opposite walls, making a small triangle. Their 2 tables at the base and Clemenza and Genco at the tip. The place was quiet, filled only with the muted sounds of 3 conversations and the occasional clatter of pots and pans from the kitchen. To enter Angelo's from the street, the 2 Anthonys had to climb down 3 steps and pull open a heavy door with the name of the restaurant on a brass plate under a small rectangular window. That brass plate was the only indication there was a restaurant in a place that otherwise looked like a basement apartment. No windows looking out on the street, only a red brick wall and those 3 steps to a heavy wooden door. Anthony Forenza glanced back to the black Chrysler 4-door parked on the street in front of the restaurant. Theo Inzana, a kid with peach fuzz on his face, at the wheel. The kid looked like he couldn't have been more than 16. Forenza didn't like having a bambino as his wheelman. It made him nervous. Beside him at the door, Boccatelli, the other Anthony, peered into the restaurant through a clouded pane of glass. He was the bigger of the 2 Anthonys, though in stature and age they were roughly the same, both pushing 50, both a little over 5'10". They'd known each other since they were boys growing up on the same block in Cleveland Heights. They'd started getting in trouble together as teenagers, and by the time they were in their 20s, they were known by everybody as the 2 Anthonys. Boccatelli shrugged and said, "I can't see much. You ready?" Forenza looked through the window. He could make out the rough outline of a few tables. "Only looks like a few people in there," he said. "We shouldn't have any trouble spotting them." "But you know them, right?" Boccatelli said. "Been a few years, but yeah, I know Pete," he said. "You ready?" The Anthonys were both wearing black trench coats over snappy 3-piece suits with white tab collars and gold collar bars, matching bright white carnations pinned to their lapels. Under Forenza's trench coat, a double-barreled, sawed-off shotgun was holstered at his waist. Boccatelli was lightly armed in comparison, with a Colt 45 in his pocket. Forenza said, "I kind of like Pete. He's a funny guy." "We'll send him a nice wreath," Boccatelli said. "The family will appreciate it." Forenza took a step back and Boccatelli opened the door for him. Clemenza recognized him straight away, and Forenza acted surprised at seeing him. Pete," he said. He started to pull open his trench coat, Boccatelli coming up alongside him as they approached Clemenza's table. Genco twisted around in his chair just as Boccatelli reached into his pocket, and then the kitchen doors swung open and a monster of a man stepped through them, his arms dangling at his sides, his face twisted grotesquely. The guy was tall enough that he had to stoop as he passed through the doors. He took a few steps into the room and stood at ease behind Clemenza. Forenza had already reached under his trench coat, about to pull the shotgun from his holster, and Boccatelli alongside him had his hand in his coat pocket, but both men froze at the sight of that bestia coming through the kitchen doors. Luca and the 2 Anthonys stared at each other over the heads of Pete and Genco. Everyone froze in place until 2 gunshots from the street broke the tableau. Boccatelli turned his head slightly, as if he had considered looking behind him in the direction of the gunshots, before he jumped, mimicking the movements of Forenza behind him, Boccatelli bringing the Colt out of his pocket and Forenza pulling out the shotgun. They appeared to have been confused by the huge, unarmed man at the table behind Clemenza before they realized what was going on and went for their weapons. And by that time, it was too late. The 4 men, slightly in front of them at the wall tables, already had their guns in hand. They lifted them from under red cloth napkins and fired a dozen shots, seemingly all at once. Clemenza lifted a glass of wine to his lips. 2 of his men came out of the kitchen once the shooting was over, one of them carrying sheets of plastic, the other with a wash bucket and a mop, and a minute later the 2 Anthonys were being hauled through the kitchen door and out of sight. All that was left behind were slick, wet spots where their blood had been cleaned up. Richie Gatto and Eddie Veltri, two of the four who had done the shooting, approached Clemenza as Luca Brasi, without a word, followed the others and disappeared through the kitchen. "Put the bodies in the car with the driver and take them down to the river," Clemenza said. Richie looked through the portholes as if to assure himself no one was listening. "That Brasi's got some balls," he said to Clemenza. "No gun, no nothing, he just stood there." Jenko said to Clemenza, "Did you see the Anthonys stop in their tracks as soon as he came through the door?" Clemenza acted unimpressed. So, from this book, The Family Corleone, which I have reviewed on the channel by the way, this was one scene that stood out to me among many great scenes in the book. Luca does so many sadistic and depraved things, and yet arguably the most memorable, the most badass, is the image which you can picture in your head of two excited and eager gunmen waltzing their way into a restaurant while Clemenza lies in wait, and then the towering beast Luca Brasi walking in. No guns, no weapons, no small talk, not even any fighting talk, hands by his side, stopping by Clemenza's side. Just seeing him standing there was enough to cure the hitman's constipation. How terrifying must the sight of Luca Brasi have been that trained killers are stupefied just by him ambling into a room and standing there. And when it's all said and done, without even a whisper, he walks back out of the room like a boss and fades away into the darkness. It's a great little scene, and it perfectly encapsulates the character of Luca Brasi. This is a man who made gangsters scared. He didn't need to do anything. His reputation was enough, which is why Vito Corleone knew he would be a strong asset to the family when he recruited him. It's quite interesting also that at face value, this is quite a stupid thing to do on Luca's part. It would be quite embarrassing if he walked into the room with no gun in hand and then proceeded to be fired upon mercilessly by the two goons. In my video, Why Did Vito Send Luca Brasi to His Death?, I talk about the ludicrousness of Luca Brasi allowing himself to get into a situation where he is strangled and killed in the first Godfather movie. But as you can see from this incident, Luca walking right into a Tattaglia and Salozzo trap wasn't the first time he did something which is pretty stupid, but it was the one time his luck finally ran out. Imagine this restaurant scene, only Luca gets shot and dies and you didn't know who he was except he had a fearsome reputation. You'd probably think, what an idiot, and what's the hype behind this guy anyway? And I guess that's what many people thought when Luca was taken out by Salozzo. But this incident here shows that there were many other times where he pulled stunts that were even more dangerous. So there you have it, a ballsy Luca Brasi move that only he could have pulled off, one that makes him look an absolute badass. For more videos and similar content, consider subscribing to the channel and hitting the notification bell. Thanks for watching.